In a small, peaceful village called Colomba, there lived a young man named Omari. Omari was known far and wide for his looks. His skin was as smooth as river stones, his eyes sparkled like stars, and his smile could melt the hardest of hearts. Women often admired him, and he knew it. However, Omari used his charm in ways that brought shame and sorrow to his people. Colomba was a village where respect for marriage and family was sacred. The villagers believed that a man and his wife were bound together not only by love but by honor. But Omari, despite knowing this, he still found joy in sneaking around with the wives of other men. Omari was clever, always making sure that his actions were hidden, but there was something strange about his misdeeds. Each time he thought he could keep his secrets, the truth always found its way out. It was as if the wind whispered his wrongdoings to the ears of the villagers. Omari's father, Juma, was a respected elder in the village. He had raised Omari with care, teaching him the values of the village, the importance of honor, and the sacredness of marriage. Juma loved his son deeply, and in his eyes, Omari could do no wrong. Whenever whispers of Omari's wrongdoings reached Juma's ears, he refused to believe them. "Not my son," Juma would say, shaking his head. "Omari is a good boy. People are just jealous of his success and his good looks." Juma's belief in his son was unshakable. Even when rumors spread of Omari's betrayal of his friend Kofi by seducing Amina, his wife, Juma dismissed them. Omari would never betray his friend, Juma told the villagers who tried to warn him. "These are lies. My son is not capable of such shameful acts." The village respected Juma, but they knew that his love for his son blinded him. They tried to explain the truth to him, but he refused to listen. Juma always gave Omari the benefit of the doubt, defending him against every accusation. His faith in Omari was like a stone wall, firm and unyielding. But the day came when even Juma could no longer deny the truth. One fateful evening, Omari set his eyes on the wife of the village chief, a woman named Naima. Naima was beautiful, graceful, and kind. The chief, an old man named Kito, was well respected, and Naima was his pride. But Omari, blinded by his desires, cared not for the chief's honor. He wooed Naima with sweet words and promises. Despite knowing it was wrong, Naima found herself drawn to Omari's charm. They began meeting in secret, thinking no one would ever know. But one day, as they met in a hidden corner of the village, a group of villagers passed by and caught them. The shame was unbearable. Word spread like wildfire. The village was buzzing with gossip. And Kito, the chief, was humiliated. The moment the news reached Juma, he stood up in disbelief. His heart raced, and his head spun with confusion. "No," he muttered to himself, "this cannot be true." Juma stormed out of his hut and made his way to the village square where the elders had gathered. Omari stood before the council, head bowed in shame, and Naima wept by his side. The chief, Kito, stood tall and angry, his eyes blazing with the fire of betrayal. Juma pushed his way through the crowd, his heart pounding. "Why are you accusing my son of such a crime?" Juma demanded, his voice shaking with both anger and fear. He would never bring such shame to our village, and especially to the chief's house. The elders turned to Juma, their expressions grave. The chief himself stepped forward. "Juma," Kito began, his voice calm, but filled with sorrow. "I have always respected you, but your son has wronged me deeply. He was caught with my wife, Naima. The truth is before us all." Juma's eyes flickered with disbelief. He looked at Omari, waiting for him to deny it, waiting for his son to prove everyone wrong. But Omari said nothing. His silence spoke louder than words. "No," Juma whispered, his heart breaking. He turned to his son, his voice trembling. "Omari, say something. Tell them it's not true. Tell them this is all a lie." Omari lifted his head, but he couldn't meet his father's eyes. For the first time, the weight of his actions crushed him, and he had no words to defend himself. "I'm sorry, father," Omari whispered, his voice barely audible. It's true. Juma staggered backward as if he struck by a heavy blow. The world seemed to spin around him, and for the first time, the truth pierced his heart. His son, the boy he had raised, the boy he had defended, had betrayed the trust of the entire village. The council of elders deliberated for hours. The village was divided. Some thought Omori should be exiled for his shameful actions, while others believed that the chief's honor must be restored through harsher punishment. Juma, meanwhile, sat silently, unable to comprehend the weight of his son's betrayal. When the council finally spoke, they decided that Omori would be banned from approaching the chief's house ever again. They also declared that Omori must publicly beg forgiveness from Kito and Naima to restore some semblance of peace to the village. As Omori stood before the village, his father watched from the back, his heart heavy with disappointment. He still loved his son, but the bond of trust between them had been shattered. Though Omori's public shaming for his affair with Naima had left a mark on the village, his arrogance remained. It wasn't long before he targeted another woman. This time, his own friend's wife, Amina. His father, still grieving over the chief's wife incident, did not notice the growing distance between Omori and the rest of the village. Omori's seduction of Amina was a deep betrayal to his friend Kofi. Despite being caught, Omori's heart refused to change, and Juma, having already endured the humiliation from the chief's case, now faced a growing wave of anger from the villagers. People came to Juma's hut again, urging him to rein in his son. But Juma, though embarrassed, still struggled to believe that his son would repeat his mistakes. He clung to the hope that Omori would change, that the shameful acts were behind them. But when Kofi himself came to Juma's hut, eyes full of hurt, Juma was forced to listen. "He is my friend," Kofi said, his voice breaking. "I trusted him. And twice now, he has wronged me." This time, Juma did not defend Omori. He simply nodded, his face heavy with sorrow. "I will speak to him," Juma said quietly. But even as he promised this, deep down, Juma knew that Omori's heart was beyond his reach. Though Omori had caused much harm already, his greatest betrayal was yet to come. His eyes turned toward Zoe, the wife of Adisa, the chief priest of Kolamba. Adisa was not a man to be crossed, for he was the spiritual leader of the village, and his connection to the spirits made him both feared and respected. Omori, filled with arrogance, thought that if he could win over the chief priest's wife, it would prove that no one could resist his charm. He began visiting Zai in secret, believing that he could escape detection once again. But the spirits had other plans. Adisa, through a dream, discovered the betrayal. Then he set a trap and caught Omori with his wife. The entire village was summoned to witness the fallout. When Juma heard the news, his legs gave way beneath him. This time, he did not rush to defend his son. He sat in the shadow of his hut, silently. The weight of Omori's betrayal was finally too much for his heart to bear. As Omori was dragged before the village, his once proud father did not speak. Juma, broken and ashamed, could no longer protect his son from the consequences of his actions. He watched as the chief priest prepared to curse Omori, his heart heavy with grief for the boy he had once believed in so deeply. Adisa, the chief priest, stood tall before the gathered villagers, his staff raised high. His eyes blazed with fury, and the air around him seemed to crackle with unseen energy. The villagers, who had grown weary of Omori's shameful acts, stood in silence, waiting for Adisa to deliver his judgment. Adisa said, "Omori," his voice deep and commanding, "you have not only betrayed your friends and your village, but you have also defiled the sacred bond of marriage. The spirits have spoken, and they demand justice." Omori trembled with fear, his once proud face now pale and filled with regret. He had never truly believed in the power of the spirits, but standing before Adisa, he felt the weight of his impending punishment. Adisa began to chant, his words ancient and powerful. The villagers gasped as a cold wind swept through the square, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. The spirits had heard the call of the chief priest. From this day forward, Adisa declared, "You shall be cursed. Every woman you desire will turn away from you. for your charm will be no more. Your beauty, which you have used to bring shame upon this village, will fade. And the respect you once commanded will vanish like dust in the wind. The villagers watched in awe as Omori's face began to change. His smooth skin became rough, his sparkling eyes dulled, and his once radiant smile twisted into something bitter and cruel. Omori, who had once been the pride of Colomba for his looks, now stood before them as a shadow of his former self. And that is not all, Adise continued, his voice thundering across the square. You will wander this village, alone and shunned. No one will offer you kindness. No one will give you shelter. The spirits have marked you, and you will carry their curse for the rest of your days. Omori fell to his knees, his hands grasping at the dirt. He begged for mercy, his once arrogant demeanor now shattered. Please, Adisa. Omori cried, spare me. I will change, I swear. I will never harm another soul again. But the chief priest shook his head. It is too late, Omori. You have had many chances to change, but you ignored them. Now, you must face the consequences of your actions. As the villagers looked on, Omori was cast out of the village, banished from the life he had once known. No one came to his aid. Even Juma, his father, stood silently, his heart broken by the realization that his son's downfall was of his own making. For months, Omori wandered the outskirts of Colomba, his once handsome face now marred by the curse of the spirits. The women who had once admired him turned away in disgust, and the men who had once respected him avoided his presence. Omori lived in isolation, haunted by the memories of his past actions. He had lost everything: his friends, his family, his charm, and his honor. The villagers spoke of him only in whispers, using his story as a warning to others about the dangers of arrogance and dishonor. Juma, though heartbroken, visited the village square each day, hoping to hear news of his son's repentance. But Omori never returned to the village. The last anyone heard of him, he had disappeared into the wilderness, never to be seen again. And so, the story of Omori became a legend in Colomba. A cautionary tale passed down through generations. It was a story of beauty and charm used for selfish desires, and the severe consequences that followed. The villagers remembered it well, for it was a reminder that no one could escape the judgment of the spirits or the weight of their own actions. Omori's tale left a mark on the hearts of the people of Colomba. They understood that betrayal, dishonor, and arrogance could never go unpunished, and that even the most charming among them could fall if they did not respect the sacred bonds that held their village together. And as for Juma, though his love for his son never faded, he carried the weight of Omori's choices with him for the rest of his days. Knowing that even a father's love could not shield a man from the consequences of his own actions.